My name's Julian, I'm 29, and I've never really fit in with my family. Not because I didn't try, but because the rules were already written long before I was old enough to understand them. My mother passed when I was little, and my dad, well, he was the only anchor I had growing up. Quiet, old school, thoughtful man. A retired history teacher who spent more time in his garden and library than at family barbecues. He wasn't flashy, and neither was I, which, apparently, made us outcasts. See, my extended family, the ones on my mom's side, they were different. Loud, competitive, always comparing bank accounts and vacation photos. My Aunt Denise was the ringleader. Sharp-tongued, always impeccably dressed, and never missed a chance to remind me I was a soft-spoken disappointment. Her daughter, Sabrina, my cousin, followed suit. Only her insults came with that extra layer of condescension you could only develop from years of private schools and not being told no. My dad kept his distance from them, and after Mom died, I did too. But when Dad's health started to fail last winter, those same relatives who hadn't called him in years began suddenly checking in. It started small, calls, offers to bring groceries, popping in unannounced with pastries they probably didn't bake. I wasn't blind. I knew what they were after. Dad had a house that sat on 3 acres just outside town. It wasn't a palace, but it was beautiful. Old stone, ivy along the side, surrounded by forest and silence. He built it himself with his father, and it was his pride. And they wanted it. Denise even joked once, while we were all awkwardly gathered during one of his hospital stays. You know, Julian, if he ever needs someone to take care of the place. I didn't react. I'd gotten good at not reacting around them. It was always safer that way. But that night, after we got back from the hospital, Dad noticed. We sat on the back porch, watching the wind roll through the trees, and he asked me something I didn't expect. "Do you trust them?" he said. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. He already knew. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded envelope, and handed it to me. "This is the real will. Keep it, and don't tell anyone." I blinked. "What do you mean the real will?" He smiled softly. "There's a version they've seen. One they'll be expecting. I had it made to see who started circling like vultures." Turns out I didn't need to wait long. I stared at the envelope in my hands, and for a second, I didn't feel like the overlooked nephew or the quiet disappointment. I felt like someone he trusted. He passed 3 weeks later. The funeral was small. That was how he wanted it. A few colleagues from his old school, his neighbor, and me. Denise made a grand entrance halfway through the service in a black coat that probably cost more than my car. She hugged me like we were close and whispered, "I'm sorry for your loss." He was a good man, even if he did waste most of his life in that lonely house. I didn't respond. I just noticed her manicure was chipped. 2 days later, I got an email from the family lawyer, Mr. Carlton. He invited me to the reading of the will at his office downtown. Denise and Sabrina were already there when I arrived, sitting on either side of a man I didn't recognize, some smarmy-looking guy in a turtleneck who barely glanced up from his phone. Probably Sabrina's new boyfriend or a fresh financial advisor. There was a plate of untouched cookies on the table, and the tension in the room was so thick you could have carved it with a butter knife. When I walked in, Denise gave me a once-over. "Julian," she said, drawing out the syllables like I was an unfamiliar food she didn't trust. "Didn't expect you to come." "I was invited," I said simply. Sabrina leaned back and smiled. "We figured you wouldn't want to sit through all this. It's mostly paperwork. Formalities. I mean, no offense, but Dad said he didn't even mention you in the draft he showed us." I kept my face blank. My heart was pounding. I could feel the original will in my bag, tucked between a notebook and my wallet. I hadn't opened it yet, not fully, just peeked at the name on the front. I was scared, honestly. Scared to believe it was real. Scared I was being played. But I trusted Dad. Mr. Carlton cleared his throat and began reading the will they had submitted. It was everything I expected. The house, the land, the savings, all going to Denise and Sabrina. There was even a line that said something about no mention of Julian being necessary, as he has chosen to distance himself from the family. When he reached the end, Denise leaned back in her chair with a triumphant sigh. "Well, that settles that." I didn't move. I just reached into my bag and placed the envelope on the table. "What's this?" Carlton asked. "I believe this is the version my father intended to be final," I said. Sabrina rolled her eyes. "Seriously? You brought a fake will?" Denise let out a dry laugh. "Oh, Sweetie, that's desperate, even for you. He was embarrassed by you. He told us that. Mr. Carlton lifted the envelope, examined the seal, and raised an eyebrow. He looked at me. Where did you get this? From my father. 3 weeks before he passed. He looked back at the envelope and carefully opened it. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Sabrina was still scrolling on her phone, clearly not taking it seriously. Denise tapped her fingernails on the armrest. Then Carlton's expression shifted. This will, he said slowly, is signed, notarized, and dated 1 week after the one we just read. The room went still. Denise sat up straighter. What? He began reading. Same preamble. Same legal tone. But then, to my son, Julian, who has been the only constant in my life since his mother passed, I leave my house, my land, and all financial assets in full. He has shown me kindness, patience, and loyalty when others only saw opportunity. Sabrina choked on a breath. What? Denise stood up. That's not possible. He said, he gave us everything. We already moved into the house. Carlton didn't even flinch. If you've already taken residence in the home, I'd advise you to vacate it immediately. As of now, Julian is the legal owner. I didn't say anything. I just watched the color drain from their faces, watched their entire performance fall apart. Sabrina's jaw was clenched, her cheeks blotchy. Denise's mouth opened and closed, like she was searching for a line she'd forgotten. But I wasn't done yet. I reached into my bag again, not with a flourish, not to be dramatic, but because I had one last piece my dad had insisted I bring. It was a manila folder, slightly wrinkled, with a small sticky note on the front in his handwriting. It said, in case they make a scene. Inside were photos, emails, bank statements, a printed transcript of a voicemail from Denise to one of Dad's former doctors, practically begging for access to his medical files, illegally. She'd tried everything, even going as far as impersonating me on a call to the bank, which Dad had recorded after getting suspicious. And he had been thorough. His lawyer hadn't even seen all of it. Carlton adjusted his glasses and started flipping through the evidence I laid before him, his brows drawing tighter with every page. Denise had gone pale. She stood frozen, watching him read, her lips twitching. Where did you get those? I finally looked at her. Really looked. And I saw the panic beneath the arrogance. The unraveling. My father gave them to me, I said. He knew what you were trying to do. He wasn't stupid. Sabrina was shaking her head now, stammering. Okay, this is insane. You're making this into something it's not. He said we could have the house. He promised. No, I cut her off. He let you believe whatever you wanted. He watched who showed up when the money looked real, and who stuck around when he could barely walk. Denise suddenly slammed her palm on the table. This is a scam. You manipulated him. He was old. He was weak. You convinced him to cut us out. Mr. Carlton raised his voice for the first time. Enough. It silenced her instantly. This is a legal will, he said firmly. And the supporting documentation makes it clear that Mr. Hale was of sound mind. The fact that you were already moving into a house you hadn't inherited only proves intent to defraud the estate. Denise was trembling now, not with grief, with rage. This isn't over, she spat. You don't get to take everything and pretend you're better than us. You were nothing. He told us that. He told us. I stood slowly. My chair scraped against the tile, and the sound echoed like a verdict. You know, I said, the last thing he told me was that he was proud. Not just of what I did, but of who I became. He said he wished Mom could see me now. So maybe you should ask yourselves why he never said any of that to you. I picked up the folder, slid it back into my bag, and looked at Carlton. Do I need to do anything else today? He shook his head. You've done enough. I'll handle the rest. As I walked out, I could still hear Sabrina murmuring something behind me. Panicked, desperate, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. That part of the story was over. I stepped into the elevator, let the doors close, and just breathed. It was strange. I had dreamed about this moment, about finally getting the last word, finally being seen, being vindicated. And yet, all I felt was tired. Not empty, just done. The kind of quiet that settles in after years of noise finally stop. Outside, the sky had turned overcast, and rain tapped gently on the sidewalk. I opened my umbrella, stepped into the mist, and started walking. Not home, not yet. Just away. They'd thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd take the scraps. that I'd smile politely while they took everything he built. But they forgot something. I was my father's son, and I hadn't even decided yet what I was going to do with the house or with them, because this story wasn't finished. Not even close. The walk back to my apartment felt surreal. The rain blurred the edges of everything. The buildings, the traffic, even my thoughts. I didn't check my phone, didn't call anyone. I just kept my pace steady, kept my focus on each step. But under the surface, a storm was building. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something sharper. They tried to steal his legacy. And not just the house. They tried to erase me from it entirely, as if I was just some inconvenient footnote in his life. But my dad had anticipated it all. The fake charm, the forced sympathy, the lies. He hadn't said much in his final days, but every time I came by with soup or a new audiobook, he smiled the same way. Softly, sadly, like he was already letting go of a world that didn't deserve him. And now, sitting on my worn-out couch, holding that envelope again, I realized it wasn't just about what they tried to do. It was about what they still could do. Denise wasn't the type to give up. She was already spinning her version of the story somewhere, probably calling my uncle or her attorney. Maybe even the news, if it got her some attention. She didn't just want the house. She wanted the narrative. She wanted to be the victim in all this. So I didn't waste time. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the backup drive Dad gave me. He'd labeled it old photos, but I knew better. Inside were documents, videos, even some private journal entries he'd recorded as voice memos. In one of them, he talked openly about Denise and Sabrina, how they pressured him for money, how they laughed at him behind his back, how they told him to update the will already because, as Denise once put it, no one wants to go through probate over a crumbling cottage. Except it wasn't crumbling. It was beautiful. I started organizing the files, not out of spite, but because if they pushed this any further, I was going to make the truth public. My dad had been generous with his words, but he'd also been smart and thorough. The next morning, I got a text. It was from Sabrina. Sabrina, hey, can we talk? Just that. No greeting, no apology, no sorry for assuming you'd be left with nothing. I stared at it for a few seconds before locking the screen. Then my phone buzzed again. Sabrina, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't mean to come off that way. We were just surprised. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, a call from a blocked number came in. I let it ring. Then voicemail. I waited. Julian, it's Denise. I know things got tense, but this doesn't have to be ugly. I think your father would have wanted us to come to some kind of arrangement. Call me back, okay? Arrangement. Of course. That was code for, let us still have part of what we stole. By the time the third message came in, this one more forceful, hinting at legal recourse and the stress this is putting on the family, I knew exactly what I had to do. That afternoon, I drove out to the house. My house. It was strange seeing it now, after weeks away. They'd moved things around. Different furniture on the porch. A flashy car in the driveway that definitely wasn't my dad's old Ford. But the second I stepped inside, I could feel it. This wasn't their home. There were trash bags piled in the living room corner. A half-drunk bottle of wine left on the kitchen counter. Empty moving boxes still unfolded. They'd clearly rushed to occupy it, like squatting in it fast enough would make it theirs. I walked through the room slowly, every creaking floorboard echoing back parts of my childhood. The hallway where I used to race my Hot Wheels. The dining room table Dad built by hand. Still there, but covered in someone's shopping bags. I paused in front of the study. His study. The door was locked. I reached above the doorframe. The key was still there. Inside, everything was untouched. His books. His worn leather chair. Even the small dish where he used to leave paper clips and loose change. I sat down and let the silence fill me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could hear his voice. After maybe an hour, I stepped outside. The sun was starting to peek through the clouds. And as I stood on the front steps, a car pulled into the gravel driveway. Denise. She stepped out, sunglasses on, lips tight, blazer like she was walking into a business meeting. Julian, she said with a curt nod, I'm glad you're here. We need to talk. I didn't respond. She approached slowly, like she was trying to read the situation. I think this whole thing got blown out of proportion. Emotions were high. Miscommunications were made. But this house, it's too much for one person. I'm sure we can figure out a solution that's fair. Fair. That word again. I tilted my head. You broke in. You moved in before the will was even finalized. You started selling off his things. What part of that do you think was fair? She blinked. We didn't sell anything. We were just cleaning up, preserving the estate. Your father didn't exactly keep things tidy, you know. I narrowed my eyes. Did you touch the safe in the basement? Her jaw twitched. Just slightly. There wasn't any. You did. I cut her off. Silence. Then, suddenly, Sabrina appeared behind her, stepping out of the car. No sunglasses. No pretense. Just a stiff glare. I told you this would happen, she hissed at Denise. We should have handled it sooner. And now, I said calmly, you've trespassed, tampered with private property, and tried to forge occupancy before legal ownership was determined. Denise took a step forward. You don't want to start a war, Julian. You're not prepared for that. I smiled. No, Aunt Denise. You're not prepared. Because what you don't know is that while you were playing checkers in my father's house, he'd already taught me how to play chess. And the next move was mine. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. I turned around, walked back into the house, and shut the door behind me. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't slam it. That would have made it feel like they had power. They didn't. I stood in the foyer for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. Then I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Carlton. They're here, I said. At the house. Still, he asked, sighing. Julian, I filed the paperwork yesterday. The sheriff's department can issue a formal notice of trespassing within 48 hours if you want to go that route. I do. There was a pause. Then I'll call the deputy I spoke to last week. He's familiar with the situation. I hung up and made my way to the study. I sat in Dad's chair, fingers trailing across the armrest, and waited. Less than 40 minutes later, a white cruiser rolled down the driveway. Denise's car was still there, parked off to the side like it belonged. Sabrina was standing near the porch, arms crossed. When she saw the flashing lights, she backed up a step. Two officers stepped out. One of them, a tall man in his late 50s, had a small folder in his hand. I recognized him from town hall meetings. Deputy Larson. He spoke with them for 5 minutes. Denise was doing most of the talking, fast, animated, trying to appear composed. Sabrina stood a few feet behind her, arms tight at her sides. At one point, Denise tried to gesture toward the house, but the deputy raised a hand and cut her off. Then he walked to the door and knocked. I opened it. Mr. Hale, he said. Yes. Do you have proof of ownership on you? I handed him a copy of the updated will and the certified court documents Mr. Carlton had emailed me the day before. He flipped through them quickly, nodded, then stepped back and turned to face Denise. Ma'am, he said, voice firm, this is a legal order. You are not permitted on this property without the owner's express consent. You and your daughter have 10 minutes to leave the premises. What? Denise shouted. You're siding with him? This is not a matter of sides. This is a matter of law. You've been formally warned. Sabrina looked like she wanted to sink into the earth. She muttered something I couldn't hear and walked toward the car. Denise, on the other hand, stared me down like I'd spat in her drink. You'll regret this, she said. You don't know who you're dealing with. I stepped out onto the porch and looked her in the eye. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A woman who tried to steal from a dying man. A cousin who moved into a house she didn't own. And people who thought quiet meant weak. She opened her mouth to respond, but the deputy cut in again. Ma'am, now. Sabrina was already in the car. Denise lingered just a moment longer, gave me a final look, and climbed in. The car pulled away in silence, kicking up gravel, and I watched it until it disappeared past the trees. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That night, I stayed in the house for the first time in weeks. I opened every window and aired it out. I packed up the garbage they left behind. I went into the basement, opened the old safe, and made a list of everything inside. Family heirlooms, some small valuables, and a journal Dad had kept over the last year of his life. I took it upstairs and began reading. In one entry, dated just 3 months before his death, he wrote, If you're reading this, Julian, then it means they showed their true colors just like we expected. I know you. I know you'll want to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. But I want you to promise me something. Don't let them walk over you. This house, this land, it's yours. You've earned it, even if they'll never admit that. Make something of it. Or don't. But don't let them take it. I cried reading that. Not a full breakdown, not loud, but a quiet, gut-level kind of grief. The kind that lives in the chest long after the tears dry. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and cleanup. Carlton helped me set up a trust, just like Dad had done, so the house couldn't be touched if anything ever happened. I replaced the locks. I changed the security system. I kept the garden just the way Dad left it. Meanwhile, Denise didn't stop. She tried to file an appeal to the probate court claiming undue influence, but it was denied almost immediately. Sabrina tried the media route, posting some story online about a dishonest nephew cutting out the real family, but it got no traction. She even tagged a few influencers. Nothing came of it. Then came the phone calls. First from my uncle, then my mom's old cousins. All people I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly reaching out, wondering if we could talk. I didn't respond. I blocked every number. They were part of that same network of opportunists who vanished when Dad got sick and only reappeared when there was something to take. But the revenge? It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It wasn't me yelling or taking them to court or shaming them online. It was watching them panic, watching their plans fall apart, watching Denise put her own house up for sale 2 months later because she'd poured her savings into preparing Dad's home for a quick flip, watching Sabrina take down her luxury apartment tour videos when the money dried up. I didn't do anything. I didn't have to. Dad did all the heavy lifting while he was still alive. By summer, the house was mine in every way. I moved my work-from-home setup into his old study, repainted the upstairs, and decided to start a small online bookstore out of the spare room, a quiet dream Dad and I used to joke about, but never really pursued. Now it felt right. One evening, just after the sun dipped below the tree-line, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and thought about how far things had come. The same porch where I once sat with him, confused and angry, wondering why I was always the outsider. Now I understood. He hadn't built the house for them. He built it for peace, for quiet, for someone who'd understand the value of stillness and legacy. And I did. There was one last letter he left, tucked inside the back of the journal. It wasn't dated, just a single line. Protect what matters. And when the noise gets too loud, sit, listen to the trees, and remember you won. So that's what I do. Not out of pride, not to gloat, but because some victories are best enjoyed in silence, far away from the people who never thought you deserved one. And if they ever show up again, they'll find the gates locked, the cameras on, and a man inside who doesn't flinch anymore. Because they thought I was alone. But I had him. And now they have nothing. Julian.